My best friend moved in after her breakup. Now she claims my husband is the father of her baby. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to say this, but I don't know who to trust anymore, not even the people I once called family. Her name is Juliet. We were best friends since high school. The kind of friendship that survives everything: parties, heartbreaks, graduations. She was my maid of honor. My son's godmother. The sister I never had. When she called me 6 months ago, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her, I didn't hesitate. She said her boyfriend had left her, that she had nowhere to go. I told her to come stay with us, me and my husband, Sebastian, no questions asked. She moved in the same night with 2 suitcases and shattered eyes. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was helping someone I loved. For the first few weeks, everything seemed normal. She was quiet, broken, grateful. I made her tea. We stayed up late watching bad TV, the way we used to when we were teenagers. Sebastian, always the kind soul, gave her space, helped carry her boxes, cooked for her once or twice when I was working late. I trusted them. Both of them. It wasn't until the 3rd month that I noticed the shift. Juliet started acting strange. Distant with me, but warmer with Sebastian. I caught her staring at him once, too long, too soft. I told myself I was imagining it. That I was being insecure. That I was the one seeing problems where there were none. But the moments kept stacking up. The way she laughed too loud at his jokes. The way he stopped touching me as much, pulling away when I kissed him. The whispered conversations I wasn't part of. I felt like I was going mad. And then, just as suddenly, Juliet announced she was pregnant. I blinked when she told me, my heart pounding in my ears. Wait, what? Who's the father? She smiled, soft and secretive. It's complicated. I stared at her, my mind spinning. Is it your ex's? She shrugged. Probably. I don't know. I wasn't exactly careful. The way she said it made something cold snake down my spine. But she didn't elaborate, and I was too stunned to press. That night, Sebastian was quiet. Distant again. I asked him if he was okay. He said he was tired. I tried to shake the feeling. I told myself it was stress. Hormones. Coincidence. I wish I'd listened to my gut, because 2 weeks later, Juliet dropped the bomb that detonated everything. She looked me dead in the eye, calm, emotionless, and said, I think the baby is Sebastian's. I felt like the world tilted sideways. I laughed. I actually laughed, because it sounded so absurd, so impossible. But she didn't laugh. She didn't blink. She just stood there, hands on her stomach, and repeated it, I'm pregnant. And I think it's his. My breath caught. Are you serious? She nodded. It happened. Once. A mistake. We didn't plan it. It was stupid. But, it happened. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grab the kitchen counter to stay upright. I confronted Sebastian that night. His face told me everything before his words did. He didn't deny it. He just whispered, I'm sorry. And right then, in that moment, I felt something inside me snap. The 2 people I loved most had shattered my life beyond repair. I don't even remember how I made it through that night. The moment Sebastian whispered I'm sorry, it was like the entire floor dropped out from under me. I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, frozen, my heart pounding so hard I thought I was going to black out. I kept asking myself, is this real? Is this actually happening to me? I finally managed to choke out the words, tell me the truth. Every detail. Now. His face crumpled. He sat down on the edge of the bed, hands buried in his hair, and for a moment I saw something I'd never seen in him before, real panic, not regret. Not even guilt. Just raw, terrified panic. It was one time, he muttered. It was, after you'd gone to your mother's. That weekend. She was drinking, I don't even know. It just happened. I couldn't breathe. My ears were ringing. One time, I repeated, my voice hollow. And she's pregnant. He looked up at me, eyes red. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I haven't touched her since. I don't even know why I. Stop, I cut him off sharply, my whole body shaking. Just stop. I sat down because I felt like my knees were about to give out. My vision blurred. The man I loved, the man I built a life with, had slept with my best friend under my own roof. And not just that, now there was a baby. A living, breathing consequence I couldn't erase. I felt like I was suffocating. The hours after that are still a blur in my memory. I remember locking myself in the bathroom. I remember Juliet knocking gently on the door, her voice soft, pretending to care. I remember screaming at her through the wood, leave me alone. And then the most surreal part of all. She started crying. As if she was the victim. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered through the door. I still love you. I don't want to lose you. Her words made me sick. Physically sick. I threw up into the sink, my hands gripping the cold porcelain until my knuckles turned white. How dare she? How dare she cry? How dare she twist this into some pathetic performance where I was supposed to comfort her? That night, I didn't sleep. I barely moved. I sat on the floor, knees to my chest, numb and shaking while my world collapsed in slow motion. The next morning, I told them both, flat, empty, emotionless, one of you is leaving. I don't care who. But I'm done playing house with two liars. Sebastian started to speak. I raised my hand to silence him. I'm serious, I said quietly. One of you packs a bag. Or I will. Juliet looked like she was about to cry again. I stared at her, really stared, and for the first time I saw it, the manipulator behind the tears. The calculation in her eyes. The way she had twisted the entire situation to suit herself. She didn't move. So I did. I packed a bag. Just a few things for me and my son. And I walked out. Emma opened her door without even asking questions. She just held me while I collapsed into sobs I didn't even know I still had in me. I stayed silent for days. And when I finally spoke, I asked her the only question that mattered, what if the baby really is his? Because deep down, the darkest part of me knew, this nightmare wasn't over. Not until I knew the truth. The days that followed felt unreal, like I was living in someone else's nightmare, trapped inside a story too twisted to possibly be mine. I barely ate. I barely spoke. Emma did everything, she fed me, she watched my son, she made sure I got out of bed at least once a day. Without her, I think I would have fallen apart completely. But the question, the one that gnawed at me day and night, wouldn't leave me alone, what if the baby really is his? Because if it was, if Juliet was telling the truth, it meant there was no going back. No repair. No future. I kept replaying it over and over in my head. The moment she told me. The way she looked at me, not scared, not ashamed, but almost calm. Almost satisfied. That's what haunted me more than anything. She wanted this. Somehow, deep down, I knew she wanted this. On the fourth day, Sebastian showed up at Emma's door. I didn't want to see him. I told her to tell him to leave. But she looked at me gently and said, you need to face it. Even if it's just once. So I agreed. I met him outside. On the steps. I couldn't even look him in the eye at first. I'm so sorry, he murmured, his voice barely more than a whisper. I swear to you, I don't even know how it happened. I was drunk, I was stupid. I raised my hand. Don't, I cut him off. I don't care about excuses. He exhaled sharply, his hands shaking. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our son. I will do whatever you need. Therapy. Time. Anything. I finally looked up at him, my eyes burning. Then we start with the DNA test. His breath caught. I saw the fear flash across his face. Juliet says it's yours, I continued, my voice dead calm. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life wondering. You're going to take a paternity test. And when it's done, then I'll decide what's left of us. He nodded slowly, visibly swallowing down panic. Okay. I'll do it. Whatever you need. But I could tell. I could feel it. Something wasn't right. The next day, I texted Juliet myself. Short. Cold. DNA test. Mandatory. I expect you to cooperate. Her reply came within minutes, of course. I was going to suggest it too. I want to clear the air as much as you do. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. It was too easy. Too smooth. I knew her too well. Juliet never did anything without a reason. If she was agreeing this quickly, it was because she was sure of the outcome, or worse, because she thought she could control it. And that's when the doubt started to creep in deeper. What if she was lying entirely? What if this wasn't just betrayal, but manipulation on a level I hadn't even considered? Emma helped me book the appointment at a private clinic. No delays. No loopholes. I made sure everything was handled directly, no contact between Juliet and Sebastian outside of the bare minimum required, and in the meantime, the messages started. From Juliet. From my own mother. Even from mutual friends. All variations of the same toxic theme: you can't let one mistake destroy your family. You're being dramatic. She didn't mean for this to happen. Forgiveness is the only way forward. I felt sick. Trapped. Alone. The people I thought would have my back, my family, my circle, they were already shifting their sympathy toward Juliet. Toward the pregnant woman. The fragile victim. No one cared that I was the one who'd been betrayed. That I was the one whose life was shattered. By the time the day of the DNA test arrived, I felt hollowed out. Juliet showed up dressed in soft pastels, her hand resting gently on her barely there bump, her face perfectly made up but with just enough redness around the eyes to look believable. Sebastian didn't meet my eyes once. The test itself was over in minutes. Swabs. Paperwork. Formalities. But the damage? The damage was already done. We were told the results would take 5 days. 5 days of limbo. 5 days where I wouldn't know if my life was ending, or if I was staring at the most elaborate lie I'd ever seen. That night, lying awake in Emma's guest room, I kept repeating the same question over and over: what if the worst is true? And even worse, what if it isn't, and they still win anyway? The 5 days that followed were the longest of my life. I didn't eat. I barely slept. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach twisted into knots so tight I thought I'd throw up. I kept playing out both scenarios in my head: if the baby was Sebastian's, or if it wasn't. And the truth is, I didn't know which outcome scared me more. Because even if the test came back negative, the betrayal had already happened. The damage was already done. The people I loved most had still ripped my life apart. A DNA result couldn't change that. I went through every emotion: grief, rage, numbness, sometimes all in the same hour. Emma stayed close. She was the only reason I didn't completely lose my mind. She made sure I showered, that I ate something, that I didn't spiral too far into the darkness. But I could see it in her eyes: she was worried about how deep this had cut me. And then, on the evening of the 4th day, something happened that flipped everything upside down. I got another message from Juliet. But this one wasn't like the others. This time, she wasn't sweet. She wasn't polite. It was cold. Sharp. Calculated. I hope you're ready to handle the truth. Sebastian already told me he'll step up if he has to. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. I stared at the screen, my hands actually trembling. She wasn't pretending to be my friend anymore. She wasn't even pretending to be sorry. It was a threat, subtle, but clear. She was positioning herself as the one in control. I showed the message to Emma. Her face darkened immediately. She's pushing you. She's trying to make you break first. And that's when something in me shifted. I don't know how to explain it. One second I was drowning, and the next, I felt sharper, colder, clearer. I wasn't going to let Juliet or Sebastian decide how this ended. I spent that night going back through everything, every text, every timeline, every memory. I made notes. I highlighted dates. And then something strange happened. I found a gap. A single gap in Juliet's story that didn't make sense. The weekend she claimed the mistake happened? The one she said led to the pregnancy? I wasn't at my mother's house the entire weekend. I had left on Sunday morning and come home early. Sebastian and I had spent the whole afternoon together. I remembered it, because it was the last time we'd been intimate before everything fell apart. Which meant, if Juliet was pregnant from that weekend, it couldn't have been Sebastian. I felt my heart slam against my ribs. I double-checked everything. The dates of her positive test. The timeline she had given me. And it didn't match. It couldn't. There was no way. That's when it hit me. She was lying. Or at least, she could be. I barely slept that night. My mind raced, torn between hope and fear, but something inside me told me not to give up yet. Not to let her win. Not to let them win. The next morning, the clinic called. I nearly dropped the phone when I answered, my voice shaking so badly I could barely get the words out. The nurse spoke gently. Carefully. Your results are ready. I closed my eyes. My heart felt like it was going to explode. And? A pause. Then, the alleged father has been excluded as the biological father. I didn't breathe for a full 5 seconds. What? I whispered. The man tested, Sebastian, is not the biological father of this pregnancy, she repeated, her voice steady, neutral, clinical. I sank to the floor. My whole body went limp. The tears came instantly, loud, broken, uncontrollable. Emma found me there minutes later, shaking and sobbing so hard I could barely speak. When I finally managed to tell her, she wrapped her arms around me and held me while I cried like I've never cried before. It wasn't his. The baby wasn't Sebastian's. She had lied. She had destroyed my life, and she had lied. But even through the flood of relief, through the release of all that suffocating fear, something darker rose inside me. Because it wasn't over. Juliet wasn't going to let this go. And Sebastian, he still cheated. He still betrayed me. The war wasn't over. It had just changed shape. And this time? I wasn't going to play nice. The wave of relief I felt after hearing the DNA results was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. For a moment, a brief, flickering moment, I actually believed it was over. That the nightmare was finished. That I could finally breathe again. But the truth is, I was wrong. So wrong. The moment the initial shock faded, something cold and ugly settled in my chest. She lied. She lied. Juliet had stood in my kitchen, looked me in the eyes, placed her hand on her stomach, and told me, with no hesitation, that my husband was the father of her child. She shattered my marriage, my trust, my life, and she did it without blinking. And Sebastian. He let her. He let me believe it. He fed the lie by omission, by weakness, by whatever pathetic excuse he thought justified sleeping with her in the first place. I knew I couldn't move forward without facing both of them. Not with a text. Not with a call. I needed to say it. Out loud. To their faces. So I asked Sebastian to meet me. Just him. Neutral ground. A quiet cafe we used to love, before everything turned to ash. When he arrived, he looked like hell. He'd lost weight. His eyes were sunken. He sat down across from me, his hands trembling slightly. I didn't waste time. The baby isn't yours, I said flatly. He blinked. His lips parted slightly, but no words came. I have the results, I continued. My voice was steady. Calm. I felt strangely detached, like I was reading someone else's script. She lied. He exhaled slowly, dragging his hands over his face. Oh my God. I waited. I watched. I wanted to see if there was even a flicker of real remorse in his eyes. It doesn't change what I did, he whispered finally. I still cheated. I cut him off. I know what you did. And I'm not here for an apology. He looked confused. Broken. But I kept going. I want you to understand something very clearly, I said softly. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a stupid, drunken night. This was a betrayal of me. Of everything we built. Of the woman who stood by you through every hard season of your life. He nodded miserably. And Juliet? I added, my voice cold. She knew exactly what she was doing. And so did you. I slid a manila envelope across the table toward him. This is from my lawyer. His face paled instantly. What is this? Separation papers, I said, my eyes locked on his. I'm done, Sebastian. He swallowed hard, panic rising in his expression. Wait, please. No, I said, sharper this time. There's no saving this. You didn't just betray me, you humiliated me. You sat there and let me believe I might be raising your child with another woman. My best friend. There's no coming back from that. He went silent. His hands trembled on the table. I stood. Calm. Steady. Unshaken. Tell Juliet, I added quietly. Tell her I know everything. And tell her to stay the hell away from me. I walked out before he could answer. But I wasn't done yet. That night, I called Juliet. She answered on the second ring, her voice light, falsely sweet. Hey. I've been meaning to. It's not his, I cut her off. Silence. The baby, I said calmly. It's not Sebastian's. I have the results. A long pause. Then, I don't know what you mean. Don't, I spat, my voice dropping into something cold and sharp. Don't insult me any further. You knew. You knew it wasn't his. And you let me believe it anyway. She started to cry. Fake, shaky little breaths. I was scared. I was confused. Save it, I said through clenched teeth. You weren't confused. You were calculating. And you've officially lost everything. She sniffled. Please don't do this. Do what? I snapped. Stop being the one you could manipulate? Stop being the fool who kept you around while you stabbed me in the back. Congratulations, Juliet. You win. You can have your lies. You can have your drama. But you'll never have me again. I hung up. And for the first time in months, I felt powerful. I wasn't healed. I wasn't whole. But I wasn't hers anymore. And I wasn't his. The days after that final phone call were strange. The chaos was over, but I felt like I was standing in the middle of the ruins, empty, numb, but somehow free. The silence was deafening, but at least it was mine. No more twisted games. No more sleepless nights wondering who was lying. The truth, ugly, brutal, was finally out. And with it came an unexpected calm. Sebastian moved out 2 days later. He left quietly, without drama, taking only a few bags. We barely spoke. There was nothing left to say. The man I thought I'd grow old with felt like a stranger now, small, broken, and weak in ways I couldn't unsee. Juliet, well. She didn't take it so quietly. The messages started almost immediately. First the begging, please, I need you. I made a mistake. I don't know who else to turn to. Then the manipulation, everyone is abandoning me. I'm scared. You know me. You know I'd never hurt you on purpose. And finally, the rage, you're cold. Heartless. I lost everything because of you. I hope you're happy. I blocked every number. Every account. I didn't even reply once. For years, I had been the fixer. The one who forgave. The one who held everything together no matter how badly I was treated. But not this time. Not anymore. Emma stood by me through it all. She was the one who reminded me, again and again, that walking away wasn't weakness. That choosing myself wasn't selfish. I don't think I'll ever be able to repay her for that. And yet, even as the dust settled, there was one more thing I couldn't shake, the deep, gnawing question of why. Why would Juliet, someone I had loved, trusted, defended for so many years, choose to destroy me like this? Why risk everything? Why rip apart a friendship, a marriage, a life? I found my answer in the most unexpected way. A mutual acquaintance, someone from our university days who I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out to me. She'd seen the drama unfold online, the subtle posts, the whispers. And she had a story to tell. She told me Juliet had done this before. Not exactly the same, but close. Back in her early 20s, Juliet had inserted herself between another couple. Quietly. Patiently. She would comfort the man when the relationship got rocky. She would position herself as the safe one, the understanding one. And more than once, she had been the reason those relationships ended. And always, somehow, she came out playing the victim. The misunderstood. The fragile. The one who never meant for any of it to happen. The pattern was there. I just hadn't seen it until it was too late. When I heard that, something clicked inside me. This had never been about Sebastian. It was never about love or passion or accidents. It was about control. About attention. About feeding whatever dark emptiness lived inside her. And I had been her perfect target, loyal, trusting, blind. But not anymore. I decided that day that I wasn't going to let this be the story of how I lost everything. This was going to be the story of how I rebuilt. I hired a lawyer. Not just for the separation, but to protect myself legally from any further harassment. I started therapy, not the casual kind, but the real, gritty kind where I had to peel back every layer of my past and ask hard questions about why I let people like Juliet into my life in the first place. I even started making small plans again. I went back to work. I made time for myself. I let Emma drag me to a movie where we actually laughed, real, genuine laughter for the first time in months. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But it was forward. And deep down, I knew the truth, Juliet's story wasn't over. People like her rarely disappear quietly. But neither was mine. And this time? I was the one writing it. I thought cutting them out would be the end of it. But I underestimated how far Juliet was willing to go to stay relevant in the chaos she had created. It started with whispers, mutual acquaintances reaching out to me with carefully worded questions, clearly fishing for drama. Hey, I heard something happened with you and Juliet, is everything okay? I saw her post something vague about betrayal, do you want to talk? It was obvious what was happening. She was playing victim in public, carefully painting herself as the wounded one, the one abandoned by the very people she loved most. It made me sick. The same people who knew us both, who had smiled at our wedding, were now being fed a version of reality where I was the aggressor, the cold, heartless friend who had turned my back on her when she needed me most. I stayed silent. At first. But then came the tipping point. A week after Sebastian moved out, I woke up to dozens of messages on social media. Screenshots. Links. People tagging me. Juliet had written a public post, a long, manipulative essay about forgiveness and losing everything overnight. She didn't name me or Sebastian directly, but it was so thinly veiled it might as well have been in neon lights. She talked about betrayal by those closest, about a baby caught in the middle, about how some people can't handle others finding happiness when their own lives are broken. The comments. They were pouring in. Strangers. Friends. Family. Messages of support. Sympathies. People calling her so strong, so brave, so inspirational. I felt physically sick. I sat on the edge of Emma's bed, shaking, my phone slipping out of my hands. The rage, the humiliation, the sheer audacity of it, I thought I was going to explode. Emma read the post over my shoulder. She was silent for a long time. Then she whispered, "You can't let her control the story." Her words snapped something loose in me. 4 months, I had been passive. A victim. Watching my life unravel while other people dictated the narrative. But not anymore. That night, I wrote my own post. I didn't name her. I didn't stoop to her level. But I told the truth. I wrote about betrayal, not vague, not cryptic. Clear. Precise. I spoke about what it feels like to have your closest friend and your husband destroy your life. I mentioned the lies, the manipulation, the false accusations of paternity. I stated the facts: DNA test excluded him. Lies were spread. Reputations destroyed. And most of all, I ended it with this: sometimes, healing doesn't mean forgiveness. Sometimes, it means choosing yourself over people who were never truly in your corner to begin with. I hit publish. I switched off my phone. I didn't care about the fallout. I didn't care who believed who. I just needed to reclaim myself. The next morning, the world exploded. Messages flooded in, some supportive, some shocked, some messy and two-faced. Juliet went silent. Her post disappeared. Mutual friends, the ones who had stood on the sidelines, started backpedaling or apologizing. But none of it mattered as much as what I felt inside: relief. Strength. Clarity. Sebastian texted me that evening. Just one line: "I'm sorry for everything. I hope one day you can forgive me." I didn't reply. I deleted the message without reading further. I wasn't the same woman who fell apart on the kitchen floor weeks earlier. I was done. With him. With her. With all of it. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in so long: hope. The war was almost over. But the final blow was still mine to deliver. The days that followed felt different. Lighter. Quieter. The post I shared kept circulating for a while, and although the comments and messages eventually slowed, the shift had already happened. People knew. The truth was out. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't suffocating under Juliet's lies. She didn't respond publicly. She didn't dare. But that didn't stop her from trying privately. She sent me one last message, one long, rambling apology laced with self-pity. She claimed she didn't know why she had done what she did. She talked about her childhood, her insecurities, her mental state during those months. She begged me to meet her one last time so she could explain everything. I didn't even open it fully. I deleted it without replying. Some doors are better slammed shut forever. Sebastian stayed gone. I heard through a mutual friend that he'd moved into a cheap apartment across town. Alone. Miserable. I don't know if he and Juliet ever spoke again. I didn't care enough to find out. The separation papers were finalized quietly, without drama. He didn't fight, maybe because he knew he had no ground left to stand on. Maybe because, deep down, he was just as broken as the marriage he destroyed. And me? I healed. Slowly. Painfully. It wasn't some magical overnight transformation. The trust issues, the panic attacks, the sudden tears that came out of nowhere, they didn't vanish just because I survived. But every day, I took one more step forward. I went back to work. I took my son on little weekend trips, just the two of us. I smiled, real smiles, not for anyone else, but for me. Emma stayed my anchor. We talked about everything, about boundaries, about friendship, about the lies we tell ourselves when we love people who don't deserve it. Without her, I'm not sure I would have come out of this hole. One afternoon, while walking in the park, I realized something simple but life-changing. I wasn't broken. I was reborn. Everything I'd lost, my best friend, my marriage, the version of myself who tolerated mistreatment, was gone for a reason. Because it made space for something better. Stronger. Wiser. I didn't need Juliet's validation. I didn't need Sebastian's regret. I didn't need to keep bleeding for people who would never stop cutting me. The last time I saw Juliet was purely by accident, passing on the street. Her belly had grown. She looked thinner, paler, more worn. Our eyes met for a second. She looked away first. I kept walking. Head high. Shoulders straight. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt free. I don't know what the future holds. I'm still healing. Still learning. Still carrying scars no one can see. But this much I know, I survived the people who tried to destroy me. And I'll never let them break me again.
Follow me for more stories.